By the way, I don't know if you've heard, but there are some Kenyans working for various airlines at JKIA who are sending people back, especially those traveling to Canada. I had one case recently and it broke my heart to hear such a thing happen to others. It is so good if you can address this on your next video. You never know, you could save somebody somewhere. And then there's somebody who replied to this comment, happens in Ghana too, and their visas eventually get cancelled as well. So sad. So guys, those are comments that are on a video that I recently did, and that's why I decided to do today's video. Do airlines treat African passengers differently, or rather do staff of airlines treat people traveling from Africa differently? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. So you want to stay to the very end so that you can just hear my insights on this topic. If you are seeing my face for the first time, welcome. My name is Eva Mtali, and on this channel, basically, I just talk matters, travel, visas, relocation, moving abroad, whether that is permanently or temporarily. That's what I talk about on the channel, and I am currently on a mission to visit all the 195 UN recognized countries in the world, and currently somewhere over 100. So I share with you guys my travel escapades to the different parts of the world right here on the channel. So if any of those topics sound exciting, you want to make sure that you are subscribed to the channel, and also do hit the notification bell, which is on the right hand side of the subscribe button. So moving on swiftly. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for your support. I do not take it for granted. And as usual, do let me know in the comment section below, where are you watching me from? Do say hello. I'm shooting this video in January, and we agreed that we are going to keep saying Happy New Year until we get to February, when we can say Happy Valentine's. So do say hello in the comment section below. Do say Happy New Year. And of course, do give the video a thumbs up, to share it, because you just never know who it might help. So guys, this issue of discriminatory practices against passengers traveling from Africa, or basically African passengers. So I'm going to talk mostly, I will talk about my experience and experiences of people that I have been traveling for quite some time. I do, especially before COVID, I was doing many flights, tens of, probably hundreds of flights every year, and I got my fair share of what would rather maybe call discriminatory. But the thing with me, because I am on a mission to travel to all these 195 countries, I kind of have developed a thick skin, and sometimes this discriminatory acts may be sent towards me and I miss them, because quite frankly, I just stopped caring. But obviously, anybody who travels a lot, you will notice some basic things. For example, if you take an airline that has a connecting flight in a different city, when it leaves Africa to that connecting city, you will realize that the plane that you left the airport in Africa is nothing close to what you get on, let's say, let's say it was an Emirates flight, or it was like a Lufthansa or an Air France or whatever airline that was. The one that lives here, you cannot compare with the one that transports you, that you use for landing to, if it's a European city or an, an American city, for example. So you'll realize, for example, when you are living like JKIA, the plane may not be very clean. Usually they are very old planes, they are very small planes. And even the lounges where you live, like let's say if you are in Europe and you're flying to a city in Africa, you will realize that even the terminals are very different. So if you're in Brussels, for example, and you want to fly Lufthansa, usually you're going to be flying from Terminal T. There is nothing close to what you get in Terminal B. I think there's just one cafe in Terminal T. And once you enter Terminal T, you can't even leave. So what I usually do personally, if I am flying out of Brussels on Lufthansa, I do my shopping because usually the flight maybe has landed from Toronto or from some city in the US. Usually it lands on Terminal B. So I do my shopping, duty free, whatever I want to buy in Terminal B before I go to Terminal T, because the moment you get to Terminal T, you cannot leave. So those are some of the things I have, the workarounds I have done. So to the extent that by the time I'm getting into Terminal T, I'm not even expecting anything. So I have zero expectations. So I don't even realize those discriminatory practices, but they do exist. When it comes to like flying, when you're flying business class or first class. So in my heydays, when I used to fly business class for work, I can't count the number of times the airline staff would come for me and they're like, "Are you on business class?" And I'm like, "I can read." Like, yeah, I can see it's priority. But you'd see me if there's maybe a Mzungu in front of me or behind me, they would not ask the Mzungu if they were on business class. If they found them on the queue, on the priority queue, they would definitely just assume that the Mzungu is on priority. So there are those things that I faced. I remember one time I was flying to Argentina and I was on South African Airlines. Was it Airways or Airlines? I don't remember. So everything was good from Nairobi to Johannesburg. But when I got into Johannesburg, oh my goodness, actually what had happened, because I had a long layover, I decided to book a hotel in Johannesburg at OR Tambo. There's a hotel at the airport. But now for me to get to that other side, I had to go through, it was like a transit desk, I think. And oh my, those guys grilled me. Like they could not understand how a girl like me was flying by herself to South America, could afford business class. Like those guys gave me trouble. I think they grilled me for like 2 hours. In fact, like I almost missed the plane. And I'm so sure if it was economy class, they would have left me. And they asked for so many things. I actually had to call my bank to send me my bank statement. And they asked me so many things. Like it was terrible. And nobody else was stopped. It was just me. They stopped me. I was actually the only black person on business class at that time. And so these are some of the things that we face when we are traveling as black people. And then I cannot even begin to tell you about the extra security checks. Personally, I am so used to them, it doesn't even bother me anymore. I remember one time when I got onto Heathrow, and you guys, if you have been to Heathrow, that airport is crazy busy. So we get off the plane and I am on the immigration queue. There's like thousands of people, there's different queues. And this Indian dude, he decides of all the thousands of people who was in the queue, I am the one who looks suspicious. So he comes to me with those sniffer dogs and he insists that he wants to do like a check on me. So I asked him, so why did you pick me out of all these other people? And dude goes like, it's random. I'm like, no, if it was random, there's more white people here than black people. So if you're really doing random sampling, it should have landed on a white person because there's more white people than black people here. And he insisted. I'm like, no, you're not gonna do that structured racism kind of card, and you're not gonna play that card on me. And I was like, no, you cannot do that to me. If you want to inspect me, you're not gonna come with that dog. And I even told them that I was allergic to dogs. I'm not. And I told him, go and send a human being to come and do that check. I'm still waiting to date. So I've already talked about, these are some of and I can't even tell you. So this other time we are flying Ethiopian Airlines from, what city was that? Bangkok to Ethiopia, guys. You cannot believe it. There was no water on the plane. And I mean no water. And surprisingly, I'm the one who was making the most noise on that plane, which is so sad. I don't know, is it because people are so used to suffering that when they suffer, they think it is normal. So I'm the one, I made so much noise until we got to Addis. And what even surprised me, like literally hurt me the most, was that on that same flight, the CEO of Ethiopian Airlines was on the same flight and there was no water. So I was asking myself, if the CEO of Ethiopian Airlines was in this aircraft, And we got such bad service. Can you imagine how it is when he is not on board? So guys, these are some of the things that you are likely to face when you're flying as an African. Now, what is interesting about all this kind of treatment is that you get this discriminatory treatment both from people that look like you as well as those who don't look like you. So that makes it even more difficult to address, because if I am being discriminated by my own people, I can't even raise the standard higher for somebody who doesn't look like me, who probably has never been in my shoes, so they don't even notice the privilege that they have. Now, back to this specific issue that one of my viewers commented about. I don't know if you have heard, but there are some Kenyans working for various airlines at JKIA who are sending people back, especially those traveling to Canada. I had one case recently and it broke my heart to hear such a thing happen to others. It is so good if you can address this on your next video. You never know you could save somebody somewhere and then somebody responded. Happens in Ghana too, and their visas eventually gets cancelled as well. So sad. So guys, a disclaimer, so I'm not even trying to play like a pick me up kind of thing, but sometimes the things we go through as Black people or as Africans who are traveling, we as Africans have contributed to how we get treated. So it is no excuse for how we get treated, but we have kind of contributed to it. And there's an article I did some time back where I said why more Black people need to be traveling, because for the longest time, there's not a lot of Black people who travel for leisure. Most of those who travel are economic immigrants. So because a lot of those who are traveling, they're probably immigrating to another country or to another country, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as you're doing it legally. You're already being suspected as being an economic immigrant before you're suspected for being a tourist. Unlike when a white person, let's say, is traveling to Africa, the chances of them being an economic migrant are less than being a tourist. So for them, they're assumed to be tourists before they're assumed to be economic immigrants, unlike us, who are assumed to be economic immigrants, and we have to prove that indeed we are tourists. And it is because of, mostly, of course, there is the racial aspect of it, but there's also the issue of how we have behaved in the past, or people like us who have behaved in the past. And so, for example, one thing that I know, for example, and I noticed this recently when I was flying to Germany, there was this guy at the airport who had a return flight on Lufthansa, but they couldn't allow him to board because of his own fault. So if you are flying into Europe, even if you're on transit, if your ticket is, I think, more than 24 hours, you must have a transit visa, even if you're not going to leave the airport. It is a rule. And when you're traveling to another country, the onus is on you to find out what policies and rules apply to you. So this guy had a ticket. He was flying, I think, to the US or something, and he didn't have a Schengen visa. But because it was on Lufthansa, he was flying through Brussels, and he was going to spend, I think, 28 hours. His layover was 28 hours. And the airline staff told him, no, you cannot board this flight. And the guy made noise and made noise and made noise and made noise. And I'm like, it's the policy, and it's up to you to read up the policy of the aircraft or the airline that you are taking. So this is usually some of the reason why people are not allowed to board the aircraft, because they didn't read the rules. So something as simple as that, if this guy had just taken the time to study the Schengen territory policy, he wouldn't have found himself in this situation. Another issue I have seen where people are not allowed to board planes is, especially to Canada, again, is how people have behaved in the past. Everybody signs up and says they're going for a conference, and as soon as they get into Toronto Pearson Airport, suddenly their life is in danger and they want asylum. Now, here is the challenge. if you, like Canada, for example, you can seek asylum either at port of entry or once you have entered into the country, and then you go and apply online. But most people, because they have nowhere to go, they didn't plan their trip, they don't have accommodation, they don't have anything. The moment they get at the airport, they know if they don't seek asylum there, they have nowhere else to go once they leave the airport. So they seek asylum right there at the airport. And remember, when you seek asylum at the airport, there are only two results, either a yes or a no. If it is a no, you have to go back to your country. And it is at the expense of the airline that brought you to Canada. That's the bit that people don't get. When you get deported, the airline that brought you is the one that must take you back. So because the number of deportations have been increasing, because remember guys, during the COVID period, a lot of visa applications delayed for years. Some people 2 years, 3 years waiting for their visas. And then one day Canada just woke up and they're like, you know what, oops, we had visas from 2019. Let's approve them. And thousands and hundreds of thousands of visas were suddenly approved. Canadian visas were suddenly approved overnight. And people are like, oops, I have a Canadian visa. And remember, having a visa does not mean guaranteed entry into the country. So most people who had visas just immediately ran and said, okay, I'm going to go to Canada. And as a result, there were a lot of deportations. And the deportations mean an expense to the airline. So what the airlines do right now, because of that experience, they want to make sure that everybody who gets on that flight to Canada stands the most chance of actually being admitted, because everybody who is inadmissible to Canada, whatever other country that is, becomes a burden of the airline. So that is one bitter truth that you guys need to understand. And that's why, for example, if you are flying to Canada today at JKIA, before you even get to the check-in counter, there's the Swiss, they call them Swissport staff, will be there to check your documents. They want to see where are you going to stay. So it is not just enough to have a visa. Where are you going to stay? Where is your itinerary? If you're going to be hosted, does this person have papers? Are they either a permanent resident, or are they a student on legal status, or are they a citizen? If you're going to stay in a hotel, have you paid that hotel? What are the contracts of the hotel? Do you have enough, like for example, if I'm going to be there for like 10 days, do I have equivalent of 10 days of booked accommodation? So if you do not have all of those, I'm sorry, no airline. Okay, some airlines might allow you, but majority of the airlines will not even allow you to board their planes. And the issue of visas being cancelled, that one I'm not very sure. But what I think is maybe the airlines are in cahoot with the immigration people, because I have seen cases whereby, for example, somebody gets on the other end, and as soon as they go to the border control, they're told, honey, you have to go back. And they cancel their visas. So those are some of the reasons why we get this unfair treatment, because it is what it is. Some of these are structural issues. Some of them is just an attitude that people have. I have seen even how sometimes the cabin crew, when you're on the African, I don't know, Middle East or Europe sector, they'll never even use the word please. And then suddenly, when now you're flying from, let's say, Dubai to, I don't know, New York, or from Qatar to New York, or from Lufthansa, from Brussels to, I don't know, Miami, suddenly there's a lot of pleases and thank you. So, yeah, so personally, it stopped bothering. When I was new to travel, it used to bother me so much. But right now, it doesn't even bother me at all, because I know it's not about me. It's about them. And especially with the ground staff, you will be surprised. There are some of these people who have been working at the airport for forever, but they have never seen even the inside of an airplane. So you who has access to the inside of an airplane, on your dime, of course, there's some chinyamaji subtle kind of jealousy, and it is human nature. And yeah, so personally, it doesn't bother me one bit. Like, I am so used to it. And depending on what mood I am in, sometimes I call it out. Sometimes I just pretend that I didn't even see it, and I'm just like, you know what? We're not going to keep everybody here. I've seen it with airlines in Asia, like Air Asia. For example, if you're flying from, let's say, Bangkok to Singapore, they will insist to show money, like you have to show physical US dollars. Well, the Mzungus are not asked anything, but you black skinned people, they're gonna want to see physical proof of funds. So these things happen in the industry, and that's why I always say, guys, especially like those of us who are working on cruise ships, I usually tell you guys, go and work on those cruise ships and come back home. Let's build our continent. And for those of us who can afford travel, please travel. Because the more of people that look like us the world sees, the more we normalize leisure travel for people that look like us. But if the only time people that look like us are traveling is when they're immigrating, then we're not going to change this narrative, and we will have to just learn to live with it. Because if just a handful of people are traveling for leisure and everybody else is traveling to go and disappear and be an economic migrant, then it will never change. They're just going to keep treating us this way. So that's what I just wanted to share about the situation. So yes and no, sometimes the airlines treat people differently, and it really depends on you. I mean, for me, I am here for the long haul, and it's not the best use of my emotions to get angry. So that's why I don't even know, like my brain has just shut it off. I don't even see it. But if you're like the occasional traveler, I think you can invest your emotions on those subtle differences. But personally, it's not the best use of my emotion. Otherwise, by the time I'm on country number 193, nitakuwa nimechoka. And as they say, kupumzika ni mbinguni. So guys, that's it for today. See you on the next one. Bye.